Hello, UI social media followers. My name is Jeff Saviano. I'm coming to you live today from New York City and our International Tax Conference. We're here at the Marriott Marquis. This is one of our major conferences in the tax practice each year. We have representatives from over 50 countries here talking about tax reform and many other issues relevant to all of our clients. The focus for our discussion today is around how tax and technology are enabling tax functions, both today and into the future. And I am thrilled, I've got some help for this discussion today. I'm thrilled to introduce my friends. Let me start to your far right, Channing Flynn, who's our global digital tax leader for EY. Welcome, Channing.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
And to my left, Martin Fiore. Martin is the America's Tax Talent Leader. Martin, thank you for joining this discussion.
It's awesome.
Appreciate it, and we're gonna jump right into it. We want to talk about digital tax.
Yes.
Channing, this is near and dear to your heart. Explain what digital tax means for a corporate tax department.
Sure. Well, digital's an often used word. It's a word out in the general economy. It's certainly roiling through all our clients, Jeff. And what we try to do is bring a perspective on it. And I think it's complicated. It can be very involved, but I actually would like to make it very, very simple. So digital, most importantly, along the subject lines of tax technology and innovation, means introducing new pieces of technology, different ways of doing things, innovating old processes into new processes, and bringing the state of the art of new tools, new software applications, driving that back through finance with the idea of increasing efficiency through reducing effort, allowing people to go on and do higher and better things that are more engaging for their minds effectively. And so that element of digital is huge. So really innovating through technology the performance of the tax function. The other side of digital, though, is equally as fascinating and relevant to most of our clients as we see around the country and the world. And that's really clients that may not have necessarily been born in the digital domain, but have evolved into it. As their boards and their owners and founders say, we really need to get onto this digital bandwagon, they're finding themselves thrust into the digital world of having to deal with the ambiguous and evolving landscape of new tax policy in every country in the world about how to tax digital. Mm-hmm. Governments see risk, but they also see the opportunity for more tax revenue. And so there's the digital technology and innovation side, which I know is driving a lot of what you're doing, but there's also the digital tax effectiveness side, which is how are you dealing with the government's trying to collect more money for new revenue streams that you might have.
That's a good way to divide it, and just looking at the changing business models as we talk a lot about and what's happening throughout multinationals in particular. And so take, for example, the automotive sector. You've got technology companies that have been taking over the dashboard. This convergence of technology sector along with automotive, and that's driving a whole set of tax issues as the companies are digitizing.
I like the way you work the word driving in there to the auto sector.
You like that? Working on that.
I think that just is a great case study to say, what could the tax issues there? You have this digital dashboard that's gathering, transmitting, and accessing value. So where's that owned? How is it changing as the car crosses state lines, national lines? In jurisdictions like the European Union, this is a really big issue because the value of the connected car for insurance, for risk, for vacation planning, for fueling the car, for maintenance on the car, all is accretive value to someone. And I think all the jurisdictions where that technology is exploited are saying, what is it? How do we get our arms around it and make a decision as to what element of it is subject to tax?
Think about what that means for a corporate tax department, Mark, something that you've been speaking and writing about so much lately, these changes that are impacting our clients so fast and corporate tax departments having to keep up from a talent perspective. That's changing the mix of people and skills and experiences that they need in the department.
You're right, Jeff. And it fits to what you just said, Channing. It's so critical. All the things you just said are dependent on one factor, and that's people, right? And so we get the number one question, are we going to lose our jobs? And to me, this is such an opportunity to expand the workforce. But that is going to require change on our part, and we're going to have to make sure that we develop different skills, right?
I think I've heard you say it, Martin, many, many times going around the world and talking to our people, which is, when you come into an organization like ours, your first couple of years are often doing mundane tasks to learn the issues, to learn the way that we have helped clients. And now technology is going to provide those people an opportunity to get up out of that role faster and more in a true advisory and client interactive role, which a lot of our people say that they want. So that's a huge opportunity.
A change in the conversation. It started with artificial intelligence and other tools. When will the robots replace us, right? And it seems like that was the driving question, and not just today. You could go back a decade and a decade before that. It was dominating the discussion. What's been interesting, I think, lately is it's shifting away from this replacement issue to more of enablement.
Right.
How can you use these tools to help you in your job today?
I think that's right, Jeff. And I think that, when you think about what does that actually mean for people, right? So if you've got a tax domain knowledge, that's your skill set. If you're an accountant focused on tax, JD, MST, there's a whole other world out there that you can build off of, right? So it's that whole area around STEM.
Right.
So are you going to build your data visualization skill sets? Are you really a power user of Excel? Do you understand how robotic process automation works? And that's really only the first step.
Yeah.
We focus on robotics today. But if you just think out, where is that going? We talk about this all the time. We have artificial intelligence, we have blockchain, and it goes on and on. So this is the beginning of the journey. It's not even close to the end.
Martin, where you're taking our organization and blending those two skill sets is awesome, because I think the future partners and leaders of our organization are going to be the people that are in their late 20s and early 30s now who know this stuff so much better than the three of us do on a day-to-day basis, right? But those are the people that are going to be the business owners. Those are the people that are going to be in the vice president of tax and finance positions in our company, because they can combine those two skill sets.
Let's think about this technologies, and we mentioned intelligent automation as perhaps the first journey for many corporate tax departments, right? Looking at new technologies. As we shift away from that a little bit, what are some of the technologies that you guys are interested in from an impact perspective? What do we think will be most impactful to a corporate tax department? Channing, what do you think?
I'll tell you two things I've seen recently that are very cool to me. Just pieces of tax automation, intelligent tax automation. One was a really cool product developed out of our German firm, wherein they were able to plug in, program through somewhat quasi-artificial intelligence all the debt limitation rules in all the countries where a lot of their big German multinationals had business. And then they had a treasury center, and they would program the debt burdens between the treasury center and all their local country operations. And then they would link that to EBITDA forecasting. So as EBITDA forecasting changed and other input factors, they would get a weekly report out driven by a robot that said you have more debt capacity in country A and less in country B, and would make recommendations to the tax planners about you could move money from a debt capacity that way. And after running this robot in the company for about 2 years, they saved $20 million through additional allocated efficient debt expense. Another fantastic application I saw just last week was a Nexus or PE risk analyzer that was a robot that pulled available data, but from really some fascinating sources. One source was the company's travel advisor, so the third party that booked all the planes, trains, and hotels, plugged into the finance role, plugged into revenue and contract booking. And it raised a red flag if something was crossing a PE threshold because someone booked a trip and then a big contract was signed, and they can go in and deal with that. And so it's a great example of the use of technology to access data that's already there, assimilate it very quickly to a person with a technical skill set who's able to make a judgment call. Takes hundreds of hours out of the manual process, but most importantly what I learned is that it takes the hindsight surprise element out of it, because they knew it now or within a week, which was really
So that's been the number
interesting
one
applications.
And I think those are great examples. It's so interesting to me as we talk to companies about what some of their digital issues are today. It almost always begins and ends with this data issue. I can't find it. Data in an organized, tagged way is the fuel for many of these new technologies. So it's interesting to see that the first journey, as we talk about automation, but getting data in a place where you can actually do something with it, that was necessary for each of those examples. Right. What do you think, Martin?
I'd go the other extreme would be something like blockchain. If you think of the internet as our superhighway, there's never been really guardrails on the sides of it. Now we have blockchain that's going to allow us to put those guardrails up. And as I look around the corner to see what's coming next, I can't see that far, but I know blockchain is going to change what we're doing. It's going to change our careers and elevate it in such a different way. So when we have these conversations with people around talent, your examples of RPA today, that's what you can do today to make a difference. Blockchain, just study it, because it's going to impact us in a different way in the future. And what I find fascinating is the future used to be 5, 10, 15 years out. that has shortened considerably. You think about how we've gone from robotics to artificial intelligence and having real conversations about blockchain all within 3 or 4 years. Huge change.
I could agree with you more, Martin, on the blockchain observation. And I think blockchain, like any new big transformative piece of technology, it's going to have some failure along its path to full integration into certainly a business or finance or tax. But I think you're absolutely right that it's such a transformative way to take a whole bunch of stuff that's, and I like blockchain mostly because of the simple concept that it's just in time, it's simultaneous, and it doesn't require, if you think about a lot of what we do in tax, it's looking back to the last calendar or fiscal year and then trying to see what happened and why did it happen. Blockchain is going to basically accelerate to today for all intents and purposes, that observation, and that's why it's transformative. But understanding that it's so new and it's so transformative, it's gonna have a stumble, and then they're gonna fix it, and then it's gonna have this big impact.
But it goes back to your point. It's all about data, right? So you just said it's instantaneous. Right now, it's not, and it's going in that direction. So the thing that seems to be circling all of this is data.
I think it's data, and I also think it's data within our tax ecosystem. So you look at who are the members, the important parties of a tax ecosystem. You've got, of course, taxpayers themselves, whether they're corporations or individuals. You've got consulting firms like us, software developers, and you have the government. And the government is such an important actor in this play, I think, that, and especially from a blockchain perspective, it's as much about data as it is about trust. And it's about verification. And it's about whether it's identity verification, trust, and fraud prevention. We're starting to see governments using blockchain technology. For example, a few governments in Eastern Europe are using it to manage their entire VAT portfolio. And that seems to be, from a tax perspective, of course, having private blockchains could be impactful, but very rich public blockchains to facilitate the efficiencies of tax administration, I think, is important too.
We'll tie that back to what we heard this morning on transparency around the world and what we're trying to accomplish here at this conference. Blockchain will allow us to take that virtual world and tie it together, which we can't currently do today, in any succinct way. And so I think there's a huge evolution that we're going to see from a government perspective.
Yeah, very much so.
The data point, Jeff, that you made, combined with the innovative technology like blockchain, not only is it accessing data in a different way, but what I think is another transformative side of this is how it's possible to pull data from so many different sources. Sources that you've never really thought to link up. The technology, the advancement is going to allow that to happen. Make huge decisions and calculations around things from disparate sources of data, which provides new insights, therefore better decisions.
So just think how exciting this discussion is. All of these changes, if you're in a corporate tax department today, if you're a millennial and you're looking from a career perspective, what an amazing opportunity. When we think of innovation, oftentimes, and if you're in an organization, it's hard to find a company today that doesn't have an innovation incubator. They don't, Channing, many of them are out where you are on the West Coast. There are a few where I am, based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Seems to be mainly on those coasts, but everybody has an innovation function, all designed to search for, discover new products and services. And now we're starting to see functions like tax. Think about innovation. Is that strange, you think, to consider the corporate innovation movement and now apply that to a corporate tax department? What's important? If you're the VP of tax, what do you try to do with that?
I think it's absolutely true what you've said. I believe that innovation is not only understanding what's possible today, you talked about the future timeline, is understanding what the art of the possible is for your finance and tax department in the future. And understanding that the future is probably on a 1 to 3 year time scale. I think if you're the VP of tax at a large global multinational, your C-suite, your CFO is looking at you to add value, meaning have tax be an accretive organization within the company, not just a compliance function. That's not a new trend, but take out costs. And so you need a timeline to take out costs through the use of technology. And then also, and this is what I think where true innovation happening, is providing true insight into the business, because tax sees something. The tax function sees something that most elements of the organization don't. Tax has to bring the business, where the people are going, how they're spending the money, and how it's reported to the government. So those insights, I think, can be very valuable. When you combine all three of those, if you get that right, that's truly innovative.
And Jeff, I also think it goes back to the talent, right? So if you think about the function, a tax function today, I think in a year or two, you'll have to have 25 to 35% of your people that understand both tax and technology. And so it gives people with purpose, the millennials coming out of universities, an opportunity to express those skills in a way that gives value right away. And then for individuals that are currently in the business environment, time to retrain, keep their domain knowledge, keep that up to speed, but also add these new skills so that they can stay current. And so that, I think that's the hardest part of this, as individuals that are, in mid-level of management. How do I react to this? How do I change? What do I need to do? And I think it's, the nice part of it, the technology, you can learn it, it's there, it's available, and that's much different than 10 or 20 years ago.
Much different. And it's so interesting, too, to see, you mentioned, kids coming out of school and the role of universities. And we've been spending more time with universities on a few different dimensions. I know, Martin, you do a lot of work with some schools to help put out and help graduate the tax professional of the future, and really crossing different sectors, too. And on the other side, from an R&D perspective, many of the innovations that we've seen as of late has its roots in a rich university that has an R&D function, and they're focused on a particular element. One example, we were up at University of Toronto and saw there's a law professor who was a judge of a Watson competition and was mesmerized by the technology and found a way to apply IBM Watson's technology to tax determinations. And I just find it interesting to see a lot of this coming from university, and maybe it's that I've got 3 kids in college today and trying to find at least one data scientist in the group has been a little bit hard.
But if you think about the big issue, you go to campus and talk to the presidents of the universities, and their role is really to put individuals in seats and get those into the best organizations in the world. And there is a talent shortage of these individuals that have this domain knowledge in one area and then can leverage that into other skills. And so I always come back to the point, if anyone thinks there's a shortage of jobs, it's just the opposite. And it's starting at the roots, which is the universities. They will change, but it hasn't happened yet. And so we've got this evolution going on at the university level. We have an evolution going on within our own organizations. And so there's all of these moving pieces towards this technology.
It just certainly influenced, perhaps, if you were a tax professional, if you're looking to graduate soon, and if you had your heart set on being a compliance professional, all you would do is prepare tax returns, you may want to shift and broaden your thinking a bit. So look at the careers as we were coming up through the firm and how that will change.
We've got a great example. We have an individual in our firm who had that experience, and he just decided to do it on his own and created artificial intelligence, for the most part, that took away hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of time. And he did it on his own. And it just brought so much value. And it goes back to a different point we haven't really discussed yet. From a leadership perspective, it's the individuals that are starting their careers that are the leaders, and they're teaching us. And I think that's such an important point to bring back to all of our people, that it's really about their leadership towards us that makes a difference, and they can have such a big impact. To your last point, 10 or 20 years ago, that never happened. Right? And so it's a big change in the way we operate our businesses.
I think it is, and you look at, Channing, where you are from and what's happening, the developments from Silicon Valley is incredible, the innovation coming from that part of the globe, and we see it too on the East Coast. What's I think really interesting about the tax industry and tax sector is that we're seeing real innovation coming from the government. And as you look across many other fields that may not be as prevalent, I think it surprises some outside of tax that the government is such an important part here. And so as we look out over the next couple of years, what do you think in terms of the real innovative digitization of government? They're doing it for a reason. Why do you think government is so intent on adopting these new technologies?
First, I agree with you. The governments are first movers. You may not see that at the federal government level in the United States, but you see it at the federal government level in countries all around the world. You do see it at the state government level, around the 50 states in the United States. I absolutely agree with that. They're moving very quickly because they're trying to solve a whole bunch of problems, I think. One, they're trying to reduce fraud. They're trying to reduce efforts of auditing things that are 2 and 3 years old based upon paper they may not be able to find. And then the people that they want to have the discussions with may not be around. So technology brings all that to the current year. It brings all of it contemporaneous, and they can have a current discussion about, you process these transactions last quarter, for example, at the VAT line. We want to understand things right now. Everybody's still around. Your ledgers are fresh, et cetera. So we can resolve this. And of course, it's about money. It's about, we need money to run the government faster.
This is the lifeblood. Tax receipts, lifeblood of government.
And they find that they can close tax gaps that they may think they have. Where the digital revolution actually started was in places like Mexico, Brazil, and Russia, where they were trying to reduce significant fraud. And those jurisdictions are actually leaders in this area, and other places are looking to emulate what they have. We were in Russia earlier in this calendar year, and we met with the head of the Russian tax authorities, and he demonstrated to our group this piece of technology for VAT compliance, where he had this great big digital screen. We were all there, the UI people and some clients, and he's like, let me show you something. And on the screen, he showed a map of Moscow, narrowed the Moscow map down to the quarter, found the restaurant where we had dinner, and pulled up our dinner bill. And you could see the entrees that we had and what we had to drink, and the VAT was indicated, the 18% Russian VAT was indicated as paid. And he says if it hadn't been turned over by the restaurant to us, we'd be able to go there and shut down basically their digital cash register, and that's the way we effectively enforce same-time compliance or VAT in Russia. And I think if you're in charge of any government tax administration, that's where you want to be. Right? It's all automatic. And he knew it within 24 hours.
Yeah, in many respects, it's perhaps as simple as follow the dollars around innovation and who's spending money and who's researching. You look at how foreign governments in particular are looking to modernize the tax function and digitize it. And in my opinion, I think you're right. I think it all begins and ends with fraud. I think they're looking to, and in your example, they're claiming that they cut fraud by a significant percent.
Yeah.
And that's, and hopefully that through good tax policy will result in lower tax rates for everybody.